Good morning and welcome into the show. It is Daniel Workman coming to you live from the Dream Imaginate Sports Studios. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. super early morning wake-up call in all time zones in between and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Hope you're having a great Friday. So, coming up here in just a few minutes, we are going to be joined by John Panabaker. And if you don't know the name, you might know the blog, the American Pyramid blog. It's been around for a while and covering different aspects of American soccer, especially at the lower leagues. I think it's been one of the critical pieces when ESPN and Fox and others have just not really done a lot concerning the game of soccer outside of Major League Soccer. Websites like American Pyramid blog, Non-League America, Soccer America, and others, the protagonists, have done work on that space, covering that space, etc. So we will be getting John on the line here shortly, coming up right after the break. Look, we're in a strange time, and we know it. I think the footy fans around the world are starting to get a little excited because one of the big European leagues a week from today is looking more and more like it is going to be coming back unless there's an announced delay. It looks as though we are going to have one of the top leagues, the Bundesliga out of Germany, coming back beginning with one match next Friday, a week from today. And then having the full slate of matches begin over the weekend, and that is cause for some excitement. One of the things that comes out of that is what are we doing either in the interim or what are we doing going forward? What are some of the lessons we've learned in the interim, and then what are adjustments we could make? And I think this kind of exercise would be good for American soccer in general, all the way around. FIFA has joined in that as well, and has made the announcement that teams are now allowed 5 substitutes, and that is going to be for the start and finish of the 2020 seasons. So this is not a permanent situation. This is a temporary or an interim situation. And FIFA had proposed a temporary amendment from the usual 3 subs to ensure the restart of football was easier on players. With the game suspended since mid-March and the likelihood of more matches in a short period to allow league campaigns to finish as soon as possible. To reduce this disruption in matches, each team will have a maximum of 3 opportunities to make substitutions. They may also be made at halftime. The International Football Association board said. So the IFAB has agreed to make a temporary amendment to the laws of the game based on the proposal received from FIFA, seeking to protect player welfare. For competitions which either started or are intended to start, but are scheduled to be completed by December 31st, 2020. So that is going to include not just your fall to spring leagues, so your Bundesliga's, Premier League, La Liga, etc. It's also going to include Major League Soccer, the USL, etc. If you're going to play and you can get your league done by December 31st, 2020, then you are going to be allowed to exercise this temporary amendment to Law 3, and it will allow for a maximum of 5 substitutions to be made per team. And so this is going to hopefully allow these clubs to get back and playing quicker and handle a higher volume of matches. So instead of having, let's say, 14 players involved in matches, this would allow you to have 16 players involved in the matches. And, that could be really big because let's take a club like Manchester City. They have European commitments that are still left on the calendar. Those are still there trying to get sorted out. And combine that with their domestic obligations like the FA Cup, as well as the league, the Premier League. They've got like up to 19 matches left. Juventus could have up to 20 matches left if they progress in the Champions League, because they still have 12 games left in Serie A. So there are reasons why this temporary solution is has been considered and adopted, and it's been an effort to protect player safety, but also I think allow these matches to be played in a more condensed schedule. Get back to get back to playing, get back into these matches, but at the same time protect the protect the players. It is a good thing. And I think, as I said a few minutes ago, I think looking at where we are and looking at American soccer, I think there are some things that we should consider with that as well. One of those things that we should consider is how we do youth soccer, and we will get back to some of that later in the show. But before we do, our sponsor this half hour is Duktig Brand, DUKTIG brand.com, DUKTIG brand.com. If you haven't yet, I don't know what you're waiting on, but Friday's a good day. Just sit down on your couch, get on your phone, get on your iPad, get on your computer, whatever device you prefer, and look up ducticbrand.com and check out they got t-shirts, they got journals, they've got notebooks, and they're not just any journal or notebook. These are soccer specific for a player, for a coach, somebody that you know. And so maybe it's not for you, but maybe it's for somebody that you know. You just want to say, hey, thanks for doing what you do, and place that order. When you do, use promo code DWShow. You'll get 10% off of that order at ducticbrand.com. We'll be right back after this. back into the show on this Friday. I'd like to introduce John Pennebaker. You may not know the name, but I bet if you've been on Twitter for any length of time, and you follow soccer, you've seen the American Pyramid blog Twitter feed on social media, and we're delighted to have John with us this morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Just enjoying my first cup of coffee.
Well, I'm not a big coffee drinker. It is just not. It's not my thing. I guess it's probably because my parents, they weren't coffee drinkers either. So maybe that's what it is. My wife, now she's a big coffee drinker. And so, every now and then I'll have something, but it's got to be like, Alaska blizzard cold for me to drink it hot. You know what I'm saying? Like for me, it's one of those where it's like, most of the time, if I'm going to get coffee, it's iced coffee, and for true coffee drinkers, they'd probably like thumb their nose up at me because they're gonna say that's not coffee, that's like milk with a little bit of coffee on the side. I'm just, I don't know, it's just never been one of those things that I've gotten into. But look, man, I'm glad that you are able to come on the show today. I wanted to bring you on to talk a lot of different things. One, and the first thing that I want to get into with you is, where did this idea come from for you, and the passion come from for you to do the American Pyramid blog and cover the sport in the way that you do?
Oh, man. Well, one of the easy answers for that is Wikipedia. I happened to start getting into soccer right at the time Wikipedia really took off. I've always had an interest in just learning about new and different things. So when I started to realize that there was actually soccer in America, not just the MLS or the One Premier League replay I got on Tuesday afternoons each week, I started digging. I think the first year I started really digging into amateur soccer, Detroit City had just started, which always helps when you're looking at pictures of like, oh my gosh, there's like 1,000 people, and they're blowing smoke and they're waving flags, and this is an amateur team. Like, of course, that's just going to get me even more interested. But when it came to the actual blog, I do have to say the inspiration for that came through a combination of Tim Ferriss and the Big Soccer Forum. I don't know if anybody remembers Big Soccer. That was an interesting place to be. But I wound up interacting with a guy on Big Soccer who was trying to start a team in Fargo, North Dakota, and he needed a website. And I've built websites in the past, so I connected with him and offered to do it. And at the time, I was listening to a bunch of Tim Ferriss and thought, he just started asking people if he could interview him. I wonder if I could do the same with these soccer teams and just find out, how do they work? What do they do? And maybe I could actually do this myself one day. So I started with Tim Singleton at FC Fargo and literally just started Facebook messaging and emailing teams and saying like, hey, I'd like to interview you and draw more attention to your team. And I got incredibly fortunate because some of the people who did it at the start have gone on to do some big things. Like, I got one of my first interviews was with Little Rock Rangers. So a lot of people helped out with that, actually just going, sure, we'll interview with you. We'll get that free publicity. So I think it was just the perfect time to actually start asking teams for interviews, and people were more than willing to interact with that, because otherwise it was pretty much just, why not try it? I'm young, I'm newly married, I don't have kids. This could be fun. I could learn a lot of stuff and meet some fascinating people. So I just gave it a shot.
So in terms of the beginning stages of the blog and kind of following the game, When you were putting this project together, was it something that it was like, hey, I'm gonna do this because I'm interested in it, or did you have like a target audience in mind? Was there like a a mission or an agenda, like I want to cover this and really bring this to people? What was kind of going through your head as a motivation for starting the blog in the first place?
Yeah, strictly personal interest. All the questions I ask are just things that interest me. And I figured I can't be the only one, but we'll find out. I could be.
Right.
Like I wasn't even on Twitter or Facebook at the start. It was literally just the website, and I was using Big Soccer. I think I'd had the blog for a couple of months before I got on to Twitter. That's when it actually started to take off, and people started to find it and read it, and actually giving feedback, and making comments, and offering up their own questions. So it was strictly to tickle my own itch at the start.
So as you've, spoken to teams and spoken to different people within the game, what are some of the things that you've learned in these conversations that going into this you had no idea about? Like, what are some interesting tidbits or facts that you came across that you're kind of like, I never thought of it that way, or I never even realized this was a thing? What do you have any kind of moments that stick out to you of information or lessons, that you've learned along the way that you found pretty interesting?
In terms of lessons, the biggest ones have always been the clubs that are most determined to engage with their community are the ones that have success. I don't know why that sounds so obvious, but for some reason it just isn't always. So when I talk to teams and I realize this, and they're like, hey, we just want to be a part of our community. We want to be involved in it. And seeing what they do, that was more of a light bulb moment than anything else when it came to the actual ideas. And even a lot of the stuff I've learned has, unfortunately, in ways been shocking. And those haven't always been in interviews. That's just been in talking with people after interviews are done. But probably the most fascinating thing I've learned in doing this blog has just been the different kinds of people that are engaged in amateur soccer and their different levels of passion. Not that there's anyone in it right now who's not passionate, but you got the people who are just all the way turned up. And it's amazing that a game, especially a game where we're talking amateur level, can generate that kind of passion, not just from an owner, but from the players and from the fans and from the community.
Yeah, I mean, look, the idea of community is, to me, what are you doing it for if you're not going to take into consideration the community, if you're not going to ingratiate yourself, involve yourself, integrate yourself into the community as well, and I think, and I've seen this with clubs who think they're attached to their communities. They think from their perspective, like, well, we're doing these matches and we've let people know what we're doing, and and we've told a lot of people about ourselves, and it's like, everything you just told me you don't know what it means to be in the community. It's deeper than broadcasting or marketing your club to the community, saying, hey, we're here. It's about, doing the dirty work of building the relationships, getting out into the community, and finding people that think like you, that are interested in things like you, and building relationships. I think one of the biggest lessons that needs to be learned at all levels of American soccer, because this goes for Major League Soccer too, that many of their teams are just as guilty or even more guilty of this than amateur clubs. And that is this idea of building relationships. Most relationships are transactional. It's like, hey, we're gonna have a match on Saturday. We're gonna put out Facebook ads. We're gonna run some radio ads. We're gonna try to drum up interest. You come to us. You come to us. Like it's we're gonna let you know we're available for your family as an entertainment option. You come to us. Well, that's a transactional relationship. If that team or that club goes away, it's like, oh, I'm sad that they're not there. But it doesn't really, knock you down. Whereas if you're really building these deep relationships, you start to turn this from a, every time we have a home game, I'm going to put it on my calendar type of thing, to this becomes a 365-day-a-year type of relationship. Yeah. For the American sports fan, one of the easiest ways to describe this is that, passionate college sports fan who drives around with, their favorite college's logo on their car. If you're in the state of Alabama, the dress code is you wear an Alabama shirt every day of the freaking year, or an Auburn shirt every freaking day of the year. I mean, there are men who that's all they own are Bama shirts and Auburn shirts. And, that is similar to what we would look to identify in American soccer in terms of a passionate fan base, is building that deeper relationship that goes beyond just showing up and buying a ticket. I identify with the club, and the club identifies with us. That there's a deeper connection there. In the conversations that you've had and the things that you looked at, going back to, say, a Detroit City, that when you were first following them compared to now, how has it been for you, someone who's been looking at them for a while? How has it been to track their progress through the system? Because they're really an anomaly. Chattanooga, Detroit, they're anomalies. They're not the standard. They prove that it can happen, but they also prove that it takes a lot more than what most American clubs have done so far to make that happen. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on some of the things you've seen over the years from, say, a Detroit or Chattanooga that has really stood out to you, that has allowed them to take this journey and follow this trajectory.
I'd have to say commitment. You cannot get to that level without a serious level of commitment, financially, with your time, to your community. You cannot make that happen passively. You have to get out there. It's got to be 365. You have to be out there. You've just got to dig down deep and commit to making it happen. And that it's not as simple as, we're a soccer team, we're here, people should show up, because if you build it, they will come, which has to be the worst idea in American sports, period, right now. You have to actually commit, and you've got to have a plan. One of my favorite quotes is from Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation. Says, never half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. That's really what you've got to do. That's what these teams have done. And there are other teams that are still amateur right now that are more than capable of doing this too. It's just a matter of committing, and it's a matter of actually giving it everything you've got all the time, not being passive.
Yeah, and I think that's such a critical lesson of you get into a project like, hey, me and my buddies, we want to build a club. What does that look like? And I think it's just this traditional kind of business idea. We're gonna plant our stake in the ground. We're gonna plant our flag in the ground. We're here. We're gonna let everybody know we're here, and we think, okay, our job's done, or we've gotten in the community. And it's like, no, that's like step one.
Yeah,
you got a lot more steps to go.
That is just entirely step one. And you have to approach this with an open mind too. Like, you can be committed and you can have a plan, but you got to be willing to be open and flexible. Probably one of my favorite stories about being open and flexible. If Dan tries to say this isn't true, I will not you, Dan, but Dan at Minneapolis City. If he tries to say this isn't true, I've still got the Twitter message. When I interviewed them, they didn't have jerseys yet. And I just randomly suggested, like, hey, your whole vibe is like punk rock. You should go with pink and black because nobody's doing it. And he's like, well, we'll ask. The coach hated it. The players loved it. They went with pink and black. And it turned out to be a great thing for the community. And that all came because they're like, sure, we'll listen. We'll take this. We'll see if it works. And it did. And I now have 2 of their jerseys because if you listen to me, you get my money.
Well, I've ordered. I'm waiting on it to come in. I ordered their long sleeve U.S. Open Cup jersey that they released for this year because I just thought that thing was fire. And so I'm going to hang that thing up in our studio that we're doing, and but it was definitely one that caught my eye, and look, I love their vibe. They're one of my favorite clubs, not just in American soccer, but all of soccer, in terms of, their identity and their brand and the things that they've done, around that. And I think you're right. There's a lot of times where we get into a project, and this just isn't related to a soccer club. It could be, a blog like the American Pyramid blog. It could be a business that I'm trying to launch. It could be any number of projects. And we get into this mentality of like, well, all of the ideas have to come from me or from our little group. And if we don't, if we don't allow those to come just from us, then it can't be ours. And I think, having an open mind, listening and watching, observing, but having this openness to new ideas, is very helpful, because you never know. Like, you may be thinking, hey, here's going to be our strategy, our tactics around, let's say, how we're going to do ticketing, for example. And it might sound like a really boring topic, and you're like, look, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do this. We're going to do this. But, being open to different ways of, distributing your tickets, a patron picking up their tickets or using their tickets, maybe the difference in real dollars, of real scale to your business and your bottom line. And you might think, well, we're just going to have them pay, $5 at the door. If we'd have done it a different way, maybe 100 people at $5 turns into 300 people at $8, and those things add up over time. And so having that posture of openness, is it. Unfortunately, it's not part of the American soccer culture, as we know. If you look at professional soccer, if you look at adult amateur soccer, if you look at youth soccer, I don't think openness is a descriptive word to use in any of those 3 sectors of American soccer. You'll find a club that might listen. You might find someone that would listen, but as a cultural piece of the American soccer lexicon, it's just not there. This idea of just being open to new ideas. And so, I think your lesson there is really good. One of the things that I know you've talked about a lot, and I've talked a lot about on this show, and we've all kind of discussed here and there and through social media, especially Twitter, is the landscape of adult amateur soccer, and just the realities of what it is versus what it could be. And we could really say that for all of American soccer, professional. Yeah. We could say that about youth soccer. But I want to zero in for a minute on adult amateur soccer and really kind of talk through with you, what are some principles, what are some things that the adult American soccer landscape, in terms of openness, right? This concept of just being open to ideas. What evolutions could we and should we be looking at? The current landscape for people that may not closely follow this aspect of American soccer is you've got two leagues that claim to be national leagues in the NPSL and the UPSL, the National Premier Soccer League and the United Premier Soccer Leagues. These two leagues are not connected. They do not have any relationship with one another. They're separate and independent of each other. They have different calendars, different schedules. But what they really are for the audience is they're really just regional leagues that have national playoffs. I mean, that's the easiest way to summarize what they are. They are not national leagues. They are a national collection of regional leagues. And you also have in some states adult state leagues that play. And so those are separate from the NPSL and UPSL. And then you also have other regional leagues like the Gulf Coast Premier League, for example, that operates, similar to a regional league inside the NPSL. They just don't have the, fellow regional leagues connected under that one organization across the country. So their league, for example, is Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and they've been in Florida. That's kind of been their geographic space. Whereas the NPSL will have that and call that a conference, and then they'll also have one in, North Carolina, one in Pennsylvania, and one in other places, that kind of thing. So that's kind of our landscape, a big disconnected blob of adult amateur alphabet soup leagues. And so I wanted to get your thoughts as someone who's been writing and covering this at different levels. What are some of the ideas that the adult American soccer landscape should be open to?
How much time do you have? I will try to summarize and be succinct. I think first off, they need to be open even to the idea of openness. That might just sound like talking in a circle, but until American soccer even gets to that place, everything else after that's moot. But ultimately, what I would say U.S. amateur soccer needs to be open to is collaboration. It's like I'm a big pro wrestling guy. So I actually wrote a full article on this a couple of years ago because a few companies got together to run a fully independent show in Chicago that actually drew like 11,000 people because these three companies decided, hey, let's actually work together this time. And I was like, wow, look at that. And it literally wound up spawning a brand new company. So I'll look at that and I go, why not just do that here? Why not find a way to collaborate? It might not be a merger, but it might be figuring out how to work together And I know people have tried and unfortunately been backstabbed for their attempt, but it would be better for everyone if we just found a way to figure out what the hierarchy is, would be the best way to put it. The one issue there is that comes down to a total lack of leadership, even from the U.S. Amateur Soccer Association, just letting leagues spring up for no reason. I mean, even the reason a lot of these leagues are national is strictly because USASA has said the only way to get your teams to directly qualify for the U.S. Open Cup is to have a national championship. That's it. There's no reason to have one other than this is the only way we can get our teams to qualify directly for the U.S. Open Cup. So there are just so many issues and so much lack of leadership. I actually think this is probably the biggest thing that amateur soccer needs to learn is being open to stepping up. I know a lot of really good people running really good clubs who could 100% step into some of these leadership gaps and voids, or be on boards or conference managers, and they could do a whole lot more good at a much higher level than just what they're doing with their club right now.
Why do you think those people are not stepping into those positions?
Busyness. A lot of those. I haven't talked to anyone who runs an amateur soccer club as their day job. So it comes down to time. Like, they just don't feel that they have the time, the energy, which I get. That's why I don't publish many interviews or articles anymore. I had a kid. It's like, much as I love this, I don't have the time and the energy to, be messaging 5 teams a week, hoping that one responds so I can get an interview out every week. Like, I just don't have time and energy for that. So that is a big barrier. But then I think everybody just feels really beat down at this point too. I've heard stories about some guys got into their leadership positions right now, and it's like just nobody else wanted to do it, and that's how the person wound up there. And you're from the outside looking, and you're like, he's doing a terrible job. Why doesn't someone step up and replace him? They're just like, 'cause nobody else wants to do it, which drives me crazy, because I'm like, then don't complain. He does something you don't like, don't complain. You could have replaced him, but you didn't. That's on you.
So looking at some of the lack of openness, the lack of getting involved, and then you mentioned the reasons for national championships really comes because of the incentives provided by USASA. Looking at the landscape of where we are and looking at the clubs and the teams around the country, there's a lot of them. People think, there's not a lot of interest. There's a ton of interest in the sport.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's been properly organized, properly incentivized. You speak of the National Championship Series as a, kind of a diversion of incentives rather than really getting incentives focused on where they should be. Looking at amateur soccer and at the level it is, taking into account the geography of this country, the population of this country, etc., what do you think from a principal standpoint, we should be looking at for amateur soccer in this country? Is it reducing travel? Is it keeping the size of the leagues in terms of the regional footprint smaller, focusing more on that kind of local competition, more sustainable business operation? Is that kind of the general idea that you look at as with all the clubs and leagues you've studied and said, hey, this seems to be a better path forward of kind of cleaning up and organizing the mess and getting it more consolidated into these kind of regionalized, localized setups?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just nailed it 100%. You have to, at this level, keep things as low cost as you can. And that means being regional. That means playing close. That means not going to a national championship. At least the leagues right now will cover your travel cost for the playoffs. That's good. I mean, because that can get crazy expensive. If New York Cosmos B wind up having to go to, a team in California for the NPSL championship, that costs a ton of money. So at least they're covering that. But other than that, what's the point? There's not even prize money on the line. There is in UPSL, but yeah, ultimately you've got to, you have to consider, is it worth the constant rate of attrition that we're dealing with? The clubs we're seeing either change leagues or straight up go out of business to keep getting, a handful of guaranteed spots in the US Open Cup, which, if you've been tracking it for the last 2 years, I don't think amateur teams are going to be allowed in the US Open Cup by 2025. I really don't. I think their plan is to eventually shut that door, and your only option is going to be the US Amateur Cup, which is a far more cost-effective option, and you will get guaranteed prize money for making the Final Four. So why you're doing the US Open Cup, I don't know. I guess because prestige. It's not like prestige gets more people through the door. But anyway, yeah, you've got to go regional. You have to.
Looking at the current setup, we talked the NPSL, we talked the UPSL, we look at leagues like the GCPL. How much did state associations and them operating state leagues play a role in the reorganization and in better alignment in terms of ideas, vision, principles? How big a role should the state associations with state leagues be in reimagining the adult amateur landscape?
Yeah. I think they should be completely involved, but that also comes back to the whole lack of leadership issue. So I do live in Kansas City, Missouri. There's a couple of teams in St. Louis, and there's the guys in Columbia who are trying to get a team going. There is no state league for us to join. Our adult soccer association in Missouri does not have a website. The 2 staff members are both volunteers, and they both have AOL email addresses, and they don't respond to emails. And yet, for some reason, they're getting Lifetime Achievement Awards at the USASA banquet. So the state associations should have a big role to play. Problem is, I just don't think they want to. The problem is there's just a ton of stagnation and lack of vision right now. If there was anybody at the state level who were to just go, you know what, I think I got a plan here, people would rally to it. But nobody seems to want to put down a plan. Otherwise, I would say, yes, the state should 100%, just like every other country in the world, where local associations help with that kind of thing. Of course, the state should be involved. The state should have been involved for the last couple of decades.
When you refer to the lack of leadership and really, leading this effort, leading this campaign, leading this idea, where do you think that leader should come from? Should it be at the USASA level? Is this a federation level? Is this a new organization that gets formed and trying to rally the troops amongst all of those different leagues and clubs? Like, looking at the landscape, talking, the conversations you've had with people, where do you look at leadership as an opportunity or solution for this problem? What level does a leader need to step into in order to get some of these things done?
Yeah. Talking strictly from the amateur level, I would say USSA. I'm pretty sure I actually I've exchanged a couple of emails with John Paul Mata, and at least he's open to looking at your ideas. I'll give him that. But I've emailed him full plans and said, like, dude, here's all USASA needs to do is say, these are the 16 regions. We're doing away with these leagues. You're going to pay us your licensing fee, and we're going to structure it as, these divisions. We're going to have Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 for the amateur level. They're going to split up, and we're going to have pro rel, and we'll have prize money. That's ideally, that's where it should have started. And it should have started there a long, long time ago. But instead, we've got this, to be clear here, I love the idea of the free market, but it's clearly not working the way it should right now because there are absolutely no parameters. And there are certain things where you need to have parameters, and this is one. You have to have a plan. You have to have a vision. And it's too easy for someone to just go, hey, USASA, I'd like to start a league. And they go, cool, we'll take your money. And then these leagues don't have a plan themselves. I've argued to the UPSL and the MPSL, guys, if you just came out and said, this is the plan, this is the direction, everybody would go to you. And no one will just be like, here's the plan, here's the slide deck, here are the regions and the divisions and the structure. No one will just come out and do it.
Why do you think there's so much apprehension from USASA, from the NPSL and the UPSL to rally behind a plan? Is it, do they have other ulterior motives and it conflicts with, the specific details of the plan that you're talking about, or is it something else?
I've heard that USASA doesn't want to be in the business of running a league, which I do understand. But I also think if they were to operate more as an FA, if they were to go, hey, we're going to help launch this, this is the only USASA approved league. This is how it works. Get in the boat, and this is how you'll get to the US Open Cup. People would jump on board that. You wouldn't really have a choice at that point. But so that's with them. That's the best I know. MPSL, I'm not sure. That's about all I can say with them. I'm not sure. UPSL did have an interview last week though, where they said like, hey, we are officially structuring ourselves around 32 divisions nationwide. So that way we can actually, we can show you like, hey, when it comes to playoffs, you will always be playing these people. So that way it's not random and chaotic anymore. I'm like, there you go. That's a plan. You're going to say, here are our divisions. This is where you will slot into based on where you're at. That's perfect. That's what you need. So they are moving in that direction, which is a plus. I hope they put out some more details on what that looks like soon. But yeah, when it comes to MPSL, I'm not sure, because if you look at their attrition rate, I mean, you'd think they would want a plan or would be looking to make some changes at this point, just based on team churn. I mean, you can say all you want, hey, we added 20 teams this year, and it's like, yeah, and you lost 19. Like, I don't see how that's a win.
So looking at the landscape, do you think that having better organization attached to rewarding achievement, i.e., prize money at the end of these seasons, would help clean up the chaos and incentivize clubs to participate. Is that your general idea around the amateur space? And then as you answer that, kind of the big last question for you is, looking forward, if John Panabaker was to be put in charge, what would you do?
Oh man. Well, to answer the first question, yes, you have to have a system of incentives for clubs, prize money. And it doesn't even have to be anything super crazy. I've often argued that it would be as simple as, hey, if you win your conference, you get to come back for free next year. That's automatically, $5,000 extra in your budget if you're in the MPSL, or $2,000 if you're in the UPSL. That's not hard. I mean, if you have a set number of conferences, which that comes down to a plan, you can actually budget around that. You can know, like, oh, hey, I don't have, if I've got 10 conferences, then I won't have that. I have to say, okay, I won't have $50,000 in next year's budget because 10 teams won't be paying it. It's not hard. Like, that's incentive enough. Be like, man, if we win, we can put $5,000 into marketing. Maybe we can get an extra 200 people in this stadium at $10 pop. That's a big deal. So yeah, you have to incentivize teams. There's got to be something beyond, we get to lift a shiny trophy and play in the US Open Cup, and if we make it further than anybody else, we get $15,000. Woohoo! But as for the magic wand question, yeah, I would totally restructure the whole thing. You'd have to. You would just split it up into 16 regional divisions right at the top. You'd have 32 semi-regional divisions below that, 32 below that. You'd cap each conference at 7 teams, so you get 12 games. There is no national championship. You win your conference, you're back for free the next year. Most of your league fees would go towards actually paying the referees. That, I feel like that's really important. A lot of people don't think about that. Is making sure the referees get paid. I've actually been to games where I've seen the referees get paid with the gate receipt money. So I'm like, well, okay, if you're going to pay a lot of money to prove that you're committed, what should that be covering? Like, well, right there, prize money. You're putting your skin in the game. Hey, I want to put a good team on the field because I want my money back. That's a strong incentive. But then it also allows the league to ensure, hey, the referees are getting paid like they should on time. There's not going to be any issues with that. And if you have that plan, if you have that structure, if you can say we've got, because I wrote it down. If you have 16 conferences with 7 teams, that's 112 teams. 32 conferences below that, that's 224. 32 below that, that's 224. You'd have 560 teams total playing almost 7,000 games a year. Now, because I work in sales and marketing and I work in business, it's like, don't tell me you couldn't go to a company and say, hey, $50,000 and we'll make this the Dunkin' Donuts first division. And you're going to be all on our website, all our social media, mentioned on all of our live broadcasts. I did some math yesterday where if you did that, you could break it down to the company would basically be paying like $37 for 2 hours of advertising. And if only 100 people watch, they just paid $2 to reach them. That's a bargain for a business when it comes to advertising, to reach that many people. So that's what you have to do. If you have the plan, you have the structure, you can actually start doing what they do overseas, and you can get naming rights sponsors who will pay, who help increase the prize money pool, which If the prize money goes up, teams can further invest into themselves rather than having to pay, expansion fees. You just commit to this price for this many years. You start winning your prize money, and all of a sudden you're like, shoot, we're able to spend, all this extra money on our facilities. We're able to hire a better coach. It helps things grow. And the more professional amateur teams are able to become, even just in terms of presentation, the higher quality of player they're going to attract, the more fans they're going to draw, the better sponsors they're going to get. You have to create a plan. You have to create a structure. You have to lead teams in that direction by showing them like, hey, this is the end goal. If we can all pull together to get there, we're all going to be better off. That's what it comes down to.
Well, I love your work and I have followed your work for a long time, and I love what you're saying, because I really believe that we have a major lack of leadership in American soccer. There are giant voids that need to be filled. There are people in this country capable of filling those voids, and we need those voids filled in order to see progress, see things come together, see things get connected better, and really reshape the soccer landscape. The current setup that we have, as you well know, is so dysfunctional, and there are so many byproducts of that dysfunction. It creates uncertainty, it creates hardships for clubs, it creates situations where we have, for everyone who's like, yeah, I want to get in, there's a lot of attrition coming out. And in business cycles, we call that churn. And so there's a lot of churn in American soccer, more than I think there needs to be or should be. And it really comes down to leadership, having a plan, having vision, etc. So, John, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your ideas. If people want to go and read the blog and check out the articles and different interviews you've covered over the years, how can they find it?
Yeah, so right now, because I have kind of pulled back from the actual blogging aspect, you would go to americanpyramid.weebly.com. I would recommend going to the archives back to January of 2016 to find an interview called From the Ground Up, an interview with Daniel Workman of Mobile City FC. That's where you should start.
That has been a while, my man.
It has been quite a while. Or you can just follow me on Twitter at @pyramid_blog. And you're bound to get plenty of hot takes and heelish actions.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Stay safe, enjoy the weekend, and we will talk soon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Daniel.
Thank you. That is John Panabaker of the American Pyramid blog. Our sponsor this half hour is Charity Water. You can learn more about Charity Water by going to charitywater.org. They provide clean drinking water to people all over the world. And even in this time of pandemic, they're still doing good work. And you can be a part of that story at charitywater.org. We'll be right back after this.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Now, you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
I'd like to thank John for coming on the show. John Panabaker of American Pyramid Blog. That interview he referenced from 2016 is about a project that I had done a few years ago. And look, I think there's a lot of those type of projects that in a better landscape would continue to build. Unfortunately, we were part of the attrition, and I appreciate John spending his time with us today. As always, you can watch at danielworkman.com/watch. We'll see you again on Monday.